Coach Vermeil, as we switch over to you and keep the car talk going, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fine, thank you. And good weather. Everything's going well. Yeah.
We got no complaints here. We're talking cars and you. It's all good.
Coach, one of the other things that we were talking about before we talked to Hurley was superstition. And
Mhm.
so I got to ask you, you were involved in sports and still are for a really long time. Were you
Mhm.
superstitious and who is the most superstitious player that you ever had to deal with?
Oh,
I don't think I was really superstitious. Maybe I didn't win enough games in a row at a time to develop a pattern and think I better feel that way all the time or look for those. I don't know. I know while I was involved in my dad's auto racing schemes there in Northern California, the old NARC Racing Association, there was a phobia about anything green in the pits. Now you see green Indianapolis cars and everything else, but no one would even wear green in the pits at that time, or it'd have a race car, certainly no, with green on it. Yeah.
Well, what did you do when you coached the Eagles? That's a whole lot of green.
got over that
I,
superstition.
I, I guess maybe that's why we won for didn't win for the first 3 years. I don't know.
Well, we'll get to the Eagles talk in a minute. We wanted to continue the conversation we were having with Hurley there. The reason we get to connect with you mostly is because of what you do supporting Concours De Elegance here in Philadelphia for Cool Cars for Kids. This is the sixth year that the event's going to go on. Can you talk about what it is and why it's so important that people pay attention and support the effort?
Well, first off, I have selfish motives. My granddaughter was born with some serious, complexities associated with rare genetic problems. Okay, and Dr. Krantz, who heads up this program, Cool Cars for Kids, was her doctor, and my family appreciated so much what he has done for her. She's now 30 years old, and how far advanced they are today because of the research of people like Dr. Krantz and staff have developed over the years. It took a couple of years to recognize that our granddaughter had some serious issues, and now they know there's a possibility of it before a child's born, all because of genetic research. And these funds that we raise in these activities go toward this kind of research. And my wife and I have our own Amy Vermeil Fund at CHOP, which supports a full-time research scientist in rare genetic diseases. So we're deeply involved. But first reason, because selfishly we have family members, and then we like the feeling of maybe helping other families prevent the diseases or be more aware of all the different things to be aware of early in the diagnosis and the process of care in these kinds of things. And we don't know of anybody else doing any better job of that than Dr. Cranston staff.
Coach, we've known you two for a long time as part of this city. Be involved as more than a coach, to be involved in the city, be involved in the community. How important is it for athletes and people in the sports world to give back to the community? And how important was it for you as a coach to impart that on the players that played for you?
Well, it was very important to me just because of how I was raised in a small community, 1,800 people. You helped everybody that had issues, and it was just part of the atmosphere and the culture of the community. And I just always felt, as it all really got started here in Philadelphia, how they support you, the general fan, and all these people in any event you have or athletes have. And these charity golf tournaments and all that are all supported by fans. That it's important to go back and thank them in a way and support them. And I get frustrated. I mean, get involved in too many different activities. You just can't support them all. We all know there's no such thing as a poor charity. So I try to do a disciplined job of structuring out my charity time to things that are really close to me and or close to very close friends and get operating in that vein. And it's meaningful. I feel good about it. it makes me feel good about it, that I'm doing something that you're not getting paid to do. You're doing it because you care. And I have a lot of athletes that I've coached over the years that do a lot of things that they don't get recognized for. I have a few of them have done some outstanding things, and I can't even get a network or ESPN or NFL firms or anything to go in and do a story about it. I mean, build your own high school, have build your own buildings. A former NFL player. Now, if he beat up his wife, it'd be on national news tomorrow. But sometimes we can't get the media to support the real positive things that are done. And with this Concours De Elegance here in Philadelphia, we get some support like we're getting right now. And it's a good thing. We need that kind of support.
How hard is it? You talk about the disparity in coverage between looking for the negative headlines and the positive in what people are doing. How hard is that for you as a coach when you have these players that are trying to do the right things? And it seems like it's a media climate just looking to play gotcha at times to catch somebody doing something wrong rather than celebrating what they're doing right.
Well, I think the modern media for the active player does a pretty good job of supporting what they do, especially the big name guys. But it's the guys that played in this league for average salaries, or, that they had to work during the off season to make a good living. Yeah, these guys that all of a sudden went out and did things on their own and developed really great programs. We had one here in Philadelphia. Pastor Herb Luss started that played for me at the Eagles. And you know it. Those things should be on the NFL Network almost as an advertising program. And the one that done in Houston, Texas by Roy Royale, what he has done there is just amazing. But I have been unsuccessful in trying to get media to go ahead and tell the story. But if they were playing today, if it was, the starting quarterback of the Eagles or Houston or wherever it may be, it would be much easier to do today. But going back in history and pulling up the old names, it's a little tougher.
Coach, you mentioned that there were players back when you coached that had other jobs because they couldn't support themselves playing football. And we've talked to a lot of the older players who do something called gridiron greats,
Yeah.
where Mike
Mhm.
Ditka is one of the people who raises money to
Yeah.
support players who have illnesses that they can't
Yeah.
afford to take care of. When you now look, you're in a city where we now have the highest paid player in the NFL, I believe, in Jalen Hurts. Could
Yeah.
you have ever foreseen that coming when you were coaching?
No, no. Hey, Leonard Toast sold the Eagles for around $60 million.
which
For
is only a
Jalen's
little less
a
than
fraction of
Jalen
Jalen's
Hurts is getting this
contract.
year.
There are a lot of players making more than that, okay, individually today, and I'm happy for them. I really am, because the game has become so big due to their performances, the history of the performances of the old timers, and everything, and the accumulation of drawing attention to the league, through television and radio and media and that. It's no question the biggest sport there is, at least in America, and I'm pleased, that the players are getting the money. And hey, the coaches too. We as coaches in the early days didn't get great salaries either. You know,
No, it seems like the coaches are getting a lot more recognition. I wanted to
all,
ask you, you're somebody who has gone through the Super Bowl on both sides of it. And no matter what it is, it seems like the teams that go to the Super Bowl and make that run the previous year tend to struggle at times the next year. What was the challenge of you as a coach the year after the Super Bowl? And what do the Eagles need to look out for to try and make sure they get back there with Coach Sirianni?
well, I think the biggest problem the Eagles may have will be the strength of schedule they have. Their schedule is really tough. Over the years, I've invested a lot of time studying schedules in advance and evaluating schedules of the past. And I have found over the years a playoff caliber team playing another playoff caliber team during the season. You have to at least break even in the number of games that you compete at that level against that level of a team. If you don't make the playoffs. And if you do break even and then beat all the teams that lose on your schedule, you're going to make the playoffs. I look at the Eagles schedule; it is tough. Okay, there's a lot of winning teams on it, and some won't be as good. Some may be even better. So that I think will be the toughest part, just the schedule itself. Now, the other thing is just the edge. There are always some people that think they arrive. Okay, we have arrived. Oh boy, we are. We are, and you physically appear to be the same, but emotionally, it isn't quite the same. The depth of commitment, the intensity and focus and the preparation, and that you can lose an edge. There are some coaches that are better at preventing that from happening than others. No one does it better than Belichick. Andy Reid's doing a heck of a job with that. Uh, but also, the influx. The what helps is the influx of new players that didn't experience it last year. There's always 15 to 20 new guys on a squad today that didn't play in the Super Bowl last year. And the right kind of kids can be a real positive reinforcement for the mental frame of mind and the preparation focus for this year's team. So those kind of things. But you do worry about it. You do. Hell, you as a coach, you have to think about it. It's just almost there's like a load off your shoulders. We won that thing, that everyone's striving for. And the only thing I've ever said to Nick, and I don't talk to him, and I just text him. I said, "No, Nick, don't ever be embarrassed by losing the Super Bowl. Every coach in the country would love to have the same opportunity."
Coach, we've heard Nick Sirianni the other day talk about how Jalen Hurts hasn't reached his full potential, that he seems to want to get better every day and every year. How much easier does it make it for a coach to have your star player or your leader who is the one that seems to be so coachable, which is what Nick Sirianni said, and seems to just on his own be motivated to get better, to not rest on his laurels, which a lot of players do when they get the big money.
Well, I'll tell you this. First off, Jalen Hurts was raised by a football coach. Okay, so he's ingrained. It's automatic to how to do it right in losing and accepting winning and big salaries. I don't think it'll bother him in any way. It won't make him any better. It won't make him any worse because he is Jalen Hurts. But I do think. Excuse me, I lost my point there. I think.
In terms of Jalen Hurts and his potential and kind of
I
embracing
think
the
he will get better because of repetition. You play long enough, things don't surprise you. You've seen it before.
And
Even
does it make it easier for somebody like Coach Sirianni to have your leader that's like that?
well, when your best players are your best examples, it metastasizes through the locker room. You can more easily synchronize the thinking of the entire organization. I've been hired to take over two real bad losing teams. The Eagles and the Rams. The Chiefs were not that kind of team. But those two teams, when your best player, excuse me, buys into what you're doing, what a tremendous example and what a tremendous uh, contribution that one guy can make to uh, spreading how he thinks amongst kids that have never experienced winning or have been beaten down and aren't as good as they ought to be. But they see this guy or these guys, the Harold Carmichaels, the Bill Berge, the Frank LeMasters, the John Bunnings, the Jerry Sizemore, Stan Walters, these guys, Keith Crafty, other young people come in and see these guys off winning teams. What we got beat in the Super Bowl in 1980. The next season, we won 6 in a row. We're the only undefeated team in football. Okay, we ended up only winning 10 games. We ran out of gas because I probably worked them too hard to keep trying to make them better, and they had already given everything they had to give. But I think it's a real advantage when your best player or two, or if you have more than two, are the examples for everybody else.
you talk about the concerns that coaches have to worry about, and obviously availability, making sure they're not injured. When you went to the Super Bowl, you did the curfew with the Eagles to make sure that they weren't out late. The NFL seems to be grappling with gambling challenges now. As a coach, is there anything a coach can do to help to insulate their team a little more from some of the stories that we're starting to see come out, so they don't have people not available on the field because of that?
Well, sometimes the league creates their own problems. you know, for a long time. Anything, you couldn't even mention gambling in a locker room. One of the first meetings in every training camp was from the NFL security out of New York, telling you no gambling, no gambling, no gambling. Stay out of Atlantic City, stay out of Las Vegas, stay out, anyway. And now they make it legal. Now they advertise it during the games. So sometimes they create their own problems, and and they are the ones, the few kids that with exercise poor judgment get themselves in trouble. And I feel a little sorry for them. I feel a little. It's like going into a candy store and not being able to buy anything. And when you're a little kid, these some of these, not all the football players are making 200 million a year. But anyway, uh, it's another problem. It's another problem, and I think the open door policy of gambling throughout the whole country now and throughout the media and everything uh, makes it tougher on the players. So I think the head coaches are going to have to continually invest more time talking about other things that influence you playing on Sunday or not playing on Sunday, uh, and maybe 5 minutes less on game plan. Okay.
Yeah, and coach, we had that debate before you got on. Jason and I were having this actually off the air, and I was thinking, what is a coach going to do? I mean, you have enough responsibility as a coach already to coach a team, to come up with a game plan, to figure out what the other side's going to do and anticipate it, and all the other things that you have to deal with. Should a coach be responsible for making sure his players or her players, depending on the sport, are are not gambling? And as a coach, what can you do? What are you going to do? Take their phones and look at them all day?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they should be held responsible, but they should be educators. Playing in the NFL is a privilege, not a right. And I think you have to continually discuss these kinds of things with your players. And nowadays, for example, when I coached the Eagles, I was a totally different head coach than when I coached the Rams and the Chiefs. When I was at the Eagles, I ran my own offense, called my own plays, okay, did the offensive game plan, all those kinds, did the practice plans, I was involved in everything. When I came back 14 years later, obviously it was the game had changed. A lot of things had changed. It's far more sophisticated, and you become more of a leader within the entire organization. So you have to uh, organize your time so you're attacking all areas that control winning and losing or make a contribution to winning and losing. And sometimes it's more important than the offensive game plan in the red zone. Yeah. Because you've got people designated and delegated to do these things, and you oversee the big picture. And it's not as much fun, but that's how most of it is done today.
Yeah, and I know, Coach, you're famous for how hard you worked as a coach and how much you put into it. And I was watching Andy Reid the other day, and Andy Reid was very much like that, especially during his time with the Eagles. But in winning, Andy seems to have loosened up. It seems like the weight has been lifted from his shoulders. He looked like he was having fun talking about his White House visit. Does it get to the point as you get more experience that the weight does become lifted with time?
But what you've got to be careful of is let it lift too much off it. You're still the head coach. Uh, you've got to be careful of forgetting some of the things that help you be what you are. And no one's done it any better than Andy Reid, really. He still runs his own offense. He's really his own offensive coordinator, and he calls his own plays. He's deeply involved. But I do know from how well I know Andy that he's not as zeroed in on the off-season draft and the players and all that kind of stuff. He stays focused on his strengths more in the offensive schemes, and he's got when you've coached as long as he has as a head coach and been as successful, it's a it's the best way to keep continuing to improve what you teach, because you got to be intellectually humble. You've got to be willing to say, I don't know what I don't know, but I'm going to find it out. And Andy Reid has never had a big ego thing where it's all him. And I think every year his offense has grown and gotten better because all the experience, the wisdom, and then eliminating what he thought was going to be good that wasn't good, and adding something new each year to the point. And then he does a great job of taking advantage of the talents of specific people within his scheme. The real talented guys are going to touch the football. I've seen great players finish the ball game, touch the ball 3 or 4 times. With Andy, more often than not, those great players are going to touch the ball more often. That's all there is to it. But it's just, there's no substitute for the experience. There's just none whatsoever. What his greatest things, I think, is his emotional stamina. That's what I didn't have, great emotional stamina. He really is a strong. He's had a lot of issues in his life that not many coaches, I don't know any, that have been confronted with it, that own personal things that could really tear a man down. But he's so strong that he's been able to focus. When he gets in that building, his focus is on his job, and no one does any better.
Coach, the other day that the Chiefs did get to go to the White House. When you won the Super Bowl, if we recall correctly, you had to have yours postponed because the
Yeah,
president had to do something else.
well,
Did you ever make it to the White House?
I've been there. I went there, but not with my team. I went there with George Allen's team when I was coaching with the Los Angeles Rams, and we went into Washington D.C. We went in. There's a room in the White House called the Vermeil Room, so I really wanted to go into there. That Vermeil really means uh, gold plating over sterling silver,
Uh,
and there's a whole room with that kind of wear.
What kind
And
of wine do they
I was
have?
gonna say I thought maybe that was the room in the White House where they served your wine out of.
I have a wine mug that it's a Vermeil.
Did want to ask you. You talk about George Allen and the influence that he had on you. Uh, I touched on it briefly when we talked to you before, but I mean, I'm fascinated. I get to go ask you about being with Coach Wooden. How did following him, letting him come and talk to your coaches, seeing his practices, how did that shape the philosophy that kind of carried you forward to today?
Well, I didn't come into the National Football League like all the coaches come into the league today. Now there's a lot of young coaches because the coaching staffs on each team are very big. They have 20, 25 coaches. And a lot of those guys are young interns working for minimum salary that are learning. It's like going to graduate school upon graduate school. And so they're far more, they learn a scheme and they watch a process. And they're far more ready at that age. I came out of high school, junior college, and college coaching, and you learn that way. And so you're learning a little bit every year, not a whole system, a way of doing things all at once. So it's an advantage to see these young kids coming in today. The Sean uh, McVays and these kind of kids. I mean, he's still what, 37 years old?
Hmm.
Came in at 32. Okay. And he can do that, and others have done it now because they were on NFL coaching. They weren't in high school coaching. They weren't in junior college coaching. They were getting their advanced degree the first year out. So I think that's made a difference in the ages of coaches, and a lot of them have done a great job.
Coach, I can't tell you how much we appreciate your time and everything you've done for the city. Can you tell us before you go a little bit more about the event and what people can do to get to go?
Well, first off, Friday night there's a gala, 6 to 10. Where it's a banquet. We serve Vermeil wines and we auction some things off. We raise a little money and build enthusiasm for the next day. And I've been to everyone that I've been in town. I've been there, and sometimes I've taken my old number 7 uh, Black Beauty that I restored. That was my dad's. Was built in 1926, and it's certainly not in the class of the Porsches they're going to have there now, and those kinds of things. But the people can bring their kids. They've got refreshments, and you can walk around the Simeon Museum. I mean, it's a lot. To me, it's one of the best kept secrets in Philadelphia. It's just unbelievable. One of the best in the world. It's on Norwich Drive over there, over by the airport. But it's a great place, and you can get tickets here. You can go online and get tickets. You've got to go to www.philadelphiaconcourse.com/event/tales. So all these kind of. But anyway, you can get tickets, and Yeah, it will enjoy it. There's a lot of father-son people that attend the events each year. The the gala the night before is a little more sophisticated. The event itself on Saturday, starting at 10 o'clock in the morning when the doors open, they'll have great Porsches. They'll have discussions there of experts like you just interviewed on the Porsche motor car. And I've owned two Porsches, and actually I drove a a 914 for a whole season when I was coaching the offense for the Rams in 1972. Roman Gabriel and Merlin Olsen were involved with the Porsche dealership, and they gave me an orange 914 Porsche to drive. Okay, expenses free.
Why
But
orange?
yeah,
He didn't
yeah,
care. He was a car guy. He just happy to have a Porsche.
yeah. There was one of those. There was one of those featured in the Wall Street Journal the other day,
It's
and
amazing.
my wife bought me a 911 in 2003 or four, the anniversary version. God, it was a beautiful car. When I came back to Pennsylvania, I ended up not ever driving it because I live on 100 acres of ground. I drive a pickup, so I ended up selling it. But I love the Porsche. To me, if it's the finest uh, sports car to own if you're just a fan of great automobiles, in a sports car level, and it's not that technical that it's complicated to drive or too sophisticated to work on when you take them to the Porsche shops. It's just expensive to work on.
Well, we know it's a great cause you're
Oh yeah.
supporting, a great event that's being had. We'll make sure to put it out on social media. Coach, we always appreciate getting some time with you. It's a blast. Thank you so much for everything you do.
All right, let's keep doing. As long as it makes a difference, you got to keep doing it.
We're totally fine with it if you are. We'll definitely call you again. Thanks, Coach.
Bye bye.
Have a good one.